YouTube. Welcome back to Overlord Alex Gaming. If you're about to start Dune Awakening, your very first class choice is more important than you might think. Picking the right starting class can save you anywhere from 10 to 30 hours of progression, give you access to some incredibly useful abilities much earlier, and make the game significantly easier. So today, I'm ranking all 4 starting classes from worst to best, based on 4 things: how much they help your early progression, how useful their abilities are throughout the game, how quickly you can naturally unlock the class, and ultimately, whether they're worth spending your starting choice on. Now keep in mind, this list is based on my own experience and opinion. Your preferred playstyle will absolutely influence your decision, but from a progression standpoint, I think there's a pretty clear winner. Let's jump right into it. First up on the list is Trooper, which I'm ranking in last place. Now before anybody gets upset, I'm not saying Trooper is a bad class. In fact, I'd argue it's one of the strongest skill trees in the game for both melee and range builds, and it's a tree that everybody should end up using at some point. The reason it's last has nothing to do with power. It's because you can unlock the skill tree almost immediately. After visiting the trainer at Griffin's Reach, you only need to eliminate a handful of targets around the starting area for a quest, and within the first couple of hours, you'll have access to the Trooper skill tree. Because of that, I don't think it's worth spending your starting class choice on. Progression-wise, Trooper gives us some fantastic tools. We get Suspensor Dash, which dramatically improves our mobility by letting us dart between enemies and objectives. We also unlock Shigawire Claw, which gives us even more movement options, and Center of Mass, a passive that boosts the damage of both our blade and ranged weapons. These are abilities and passives you'll probably use for your entire playthrough. So while Trooper is absolutely one of the best skill trees in the game, it's also one of the easiest to unlock. That's why it lands in 4th place as a starting class. Next up is Mentat. Personally, I think this is one of the most underwhelming trees in the game during the early progression. Early on, the biggest benefits are the marksman technique, which increases headshot damage, along with a few passive bonuses. The problem is you simply don't have access to powerful rifles or pistols early enough to really take advantage of these bonuses. In addition to that, Mentat turret is very underwhelming for most fights in the early game compared to other abilities we can use. Decoy also doesn't work really well with the game's AI all the time. Later in the game, though, Mentat becomes much more valuable if you're running an endgame marksman build, as you've seen in some of my videos that I put out. It's fantastic for rifle and pistol builds, and passives like Garment Keeper and Tailoring become incredibly useful for repairing and maintaining your equipment, but during the first 15 to 20 hours, I just don't think it provides enough value compared to the other classes. On top of that, you can naturally unlock Mentat once you reach the Tier 2 region, that has the iron ore and other items over there, which isn't very far into the game. So just like Trooper, I don't think it's worth using this as your starting class choice. Coming in at number 2 is Swordmaster. This one was honestly very close to taking the top spot. Swordmaster gives us some of the strongest combat abilities available in the early game. Crippling Strike and Knee Charge make fighting enemies much easier, especially if you enjoy a melee-focused playstyle. The only reason I rank it behind Bene Gesserit is because Bene Gesserit simply offers more overall utility and mobility. Swordmaster also has some excellent sustain passives like Field Medicine and Optimized Hydration. These increase your healing effectiveness and give you an additional dodge, making combat much more forgiving if you're still learning the game's mechanics. That said, Dune Awakening gives you plenty of plant fiber early on, so crafting basic bandages is rarely an issue. Because of that, experienced players probably won't get as much value from these sustain passives. One thing Swordmaster definitely has going for it is when you unlock it. You won't naturally gain access to the skill tree until the Tier 3 region, roughly around the halfway point of the Haga Basin progression. If you rush straight to the trainer, you can actually unlock it a little bit easier, but it's still much later than Trooper or Mentat. If you love melee combat and want a very straightforward early game experience, Swordmaster is an excellent starting choice. Finally, we have what I consider to be the best starting class in Dune Awakening, Bene Gesserit. Now to be clear, I'm not saying Bene Gesserit is necessarily the strongest skill tree in the entire game. I'm saying it's the class that gives you the most value as your starting class, and it's a big difference. Firstly, we get Bindu Sprint. Until you unlock the Sandbike, this is one of the best movement abilities in the game. It makes traveling across the starting zone much faster, speeds up questing, and lets you fly through the long hallways inside testing stations and other labs and areas you can go into the game. Then we have Compel and Weirding Step. These are 2 incredible crowd control abilities that make landing slow blade attacks, melee combos, and even headshots much easier, regardless of whether you're playing a melee or ranged setup. The tree also offers several excellent survival passives, increasing your maximum health early on, and is much stronger than most people realize. If you've ever relied on blood packs in the game so far, instead of carrying enough water, you've probably noticed how low your health can get. Having an additional 25 health during the early game can easily allow you to survive another shot or two from most enemies. But the biggest reason I recommend Bene Gesserit is simply when you unlock it. Unlike Trooper and Mentat, you don't naturally gain access to the Bene Gesserit trainer until about the beginning of Tier 4, which is a little bit over halfway through the game. Depending on how quickly you're progressing, that could easily be anywhere from 10 to 30 hours into your playthrough. That's a very long time to wait for some of the best utility abilities in the game. By choosing Bene Gesserit as your starting class, you're giving yourself access to those abilities right from the beginning instead of waiting until much later. And that's why I think it's the best overall starting choice. So to wrap everything up, if you're looking for the easiest combat experience and you know you're going to focus heavily on melee, I'd recommend starting with Swordmaster. If you want the strongest overall progression, better mobility, more utility, and abilities that work well for both melee and range builds, then I'd recommend Bene Gesserit. Overall, I think Swordmaster and Bene Gesserit both provide significantly more value as a starting class because Trooper and Mentat can both be unlocked very early through normal progression. For me, Bene Gesserit is the clear number one pick. Once you unlock the third combat ability slot and combine Compel, Weirding Step, and Shigawire Claw, you'll have almost no trouble clearing enemy camps, testing stations, or progressing comfortably through the early and mid game. Of course, this is just my opinion, and I'm sure some of you had a great experience starting with the other classes. So let me know what class you picked and whether you choose differently if you started over. Hope you all found this guide helpful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you dropped a like and subscribed. It helps the channel out more than you know. And if you have any questions or think I ranked these differently than you would have, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.